Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Vandana Kulkarni, the professor and head of the Department of Wayanad Institute of Medical Sciences. And also, I would like to thank Dr. Vinuta, who was my student in JSS Medical College, now presently working there in Wayanad Institute of Medical Sciences, for this opportunity that has been given to me. So I'll be talking about the perioperative fluid management in children. So I would like to bring also greetings from JSS Medical College Hospital in Mysore, presently where I'm working. There is a lot of confusion in adult fluid management. Like, we have many things like restrictive fluid therapy, the liberalized fluid therapy, and also the goal-directed fluid therapy. But though we have many of them nowadays, it's been talked about personalized goal-directed fluid therapy also, but they have not been translated into a better outcome in the postoperative period. So, but when such a confusion is there for the adult population, you can imagine what can be the confusion in the pediatric population. And it is a real challenge for managing the perioperative fluid therapy in case of especially the premature neonates and also in the neonates. And one thing one should know that the hypovolemia can be really underestimated in this pediatric age group, and it can be a cause for perioperative cardiac arrest. So what are the objectives of perioperative fluid management? So basic objectives are mainly to maintain the normal physiological state. So what is this normal physiological state? That means the extracellular fluid volume, the blood volume, the tissue perfusion, the metabolic functions, and the electrolyte and acid-base status all have to be normal throughout the perioperative period. So that is what is our main objectives when we manage the perioperative fluid therapy in these children. So before actually going into the fluid management, just let us know briefly about the physiological consideration in these pediatric age group, especially the body water composition. In fetal life, the body water, total body water is very high with a high extracellular fluid. And again, in the preterm infant, the total body water is very high. Extracellular fluid is also very high. Up to 6 months of age, the total body water is almost about 75% in a term infant with high extracellular fluid. So after 6 months, the total body water starts coming down, and by about 1 to 2 years, the total body water reaches 60%. That is as far as the adult the component of total body water, and the extracellular fluid also comes down. It comes down to about 20%, and the intracellular fluid increases to about 40%. This all occurs after about 1 year of age. So the blood volume also very high in the preterm neonate, and in the infants and children, it's about 70 to 80 ml, and in adults it's about 70 ml. So this total estimated blood volume is important for us to calculate the maximal allowable blood loss. Again, the hemoglobin and hematocrit levels also important for calculating the MEMPL. So initially it is mainly the fetal hemoglobin. The fetal hemoglobin, the OD curve is shifted to the left, and it won't release oxygen easily to the tissues, and it is quite high because the PaO2 is in the fetus is roughly about 30 to 40 millimeters of mercury. Once the child is born and breathes room air, the PaO2 increases. So suddenly the stimulation for production of erythrocytes decreases. So that's the reason the hemoglobin level drops down to nearly about 9 to 11 grams by 2 to 3 months of age. And this is called as the physiological anemia of the infancy. But this hemoglobin is adult hemoglobin. So ODC curve is shifted to the right, And the tissues of these children, even though it is 9 to 11 grams up to about 3 months, so it won't produce any problem. So gradually the hemoglobin increases and comes down to nearly the adult levels by 1 year of age. So coming to the perioperative fluid management, so this can be discussed in under three headings: preoperative, intraoperative, and postoperative. Preoperative is again important because if the child is taken up for elective procedures, definitely you can make the child normovolemic, and you can also think about the NPO status. But if the child is taken up as an emergency case, definitely the child will be running with a lot of fluid deficit. So this fluid deficit has to be assessed and corrected before taking up for surgery. So how do we assess this fluid deficit? So there are various clinical signs and parameters are there. So these signs and clinical parameters have to be really assessed, and by that only you can know whether the child is having a mild, moderate, or severe dehydration. So once we assess whether the child has got mild or moderate or severe dehydration, the fluid deficit for mild dehydration is roughly about 50 ml per kg. For moderate dehydration, it's about 100 ml, and severe dehydration, it's about 150 ml per kg body weight. So if the child is running this deficit, this child has to be rehydrated before taking up for surgery. So how do we rehydrate? So it can be rehydrated with boluses of 20 ml per kg of isotonic fluid. So if the child has gone in for severe dehydration or moderately severe dehydration, then the child require multiple boluses of these isotonic fluids for correcting the dehydration. So how do we know the correction of the dehydration has occurred? Is by clinical improvement, especially the heart rate coming down, blood pressure getting normalized, perfusion getting improved, and better urine output, and the child's sensorium is becoming more normal. So if the child is being taken up as an elective procedure, so you can definitely go for the preoperative NPO status. You have to keep, and you have to guide the the parents regarding how long they have to keep the child fasting. Nowadays, we know that the aspiration risk has been found to be very low. That is the reason a lot of changes in the fasting guidelines have occurred. So the ISA, Indian Society of Anesthesiology guidelines, says that water can be given up to 3 ml per kg body weight till 1 hour of surgery, and clear fluids of up to 3 ml per kg body weight till 2 hours, and breast milk the 4 hours gap, and then the formula feeds and the cow's milk or even the solids up to 6 hours fasting. So this fasting guidelines have to be adhered to. Now many of the countries, they want to go for water or clear fluids up to 0 hours. Once we keep giving fluids, the anxiety level of the child will come down, and the child will be normovolemic by the time we take up for surgery. So coming to the intraoperative fluid requirements, so this can be discussed as the whatever the deficits are already there that have to be replaced, and maintenance requirement are also there. So and the replacement of ongoing loss. So all these three things have to be kept in mind while we discuss about intraoperative fluid management. So the maintenance fluid are always required because normally also every minute, every hour, every one of us, including the children also, they'll be losing some amount of fluids because of the sensible and insensible losses. The sensible losses, it is one can be measured, that especially the urine output. Insensible losses can be by respiration and perspiration. So this Holiday and Cigar have postulated this 4-to-1 formula as early as in 1954. The same formula we can use for calculating the maintenance fluid, and definitely we can give this maintenance fluid throughout the procedure. But of late, the Association of the Scientific Medical Societies in Germany, they have said that this 4-to-1 rule may be slightly on the lesser side for maintenance during the surgery. So it is always better to go for 10 to 20 ml per kg per hour as a continuous infusion of maintenance fluid for majority of the routine surgeries. So the second thing is about the replacement of ongoing losses. So there will be a continuous ongoing losses will be occurring. Maybe third space loss, of course, it is debatable, or there can be some amount of continuous oozing will be there, and this has to be replaced. So it depends on what is the type of procedure. So whether it's a minor surgery, moderately severe surgery, and a major surgery. For the minor surgery, the child may require about 2 to 4 ml, moderately severe surgery about 4 to 6 ml, and major surgery as high as 10 to 20 ml. But in certain surgery procedures, especially ischiotomy of the burns or even major intra-abdominal surgeries in neonates, the requirement can go up to almost 50 ml per kg per hour. So this has to be replaced intraoperatively along with the maintenance fluids. So the whatever the fluids we give, it should be very accurately titrated and then given. So one can use a burette and with a microdrip set, or ideal would be to go for the infusion pumps. So what is an ideal fluid to be given? Coming to the type of fluids that has to be given. So various people have described ideal fluids like it should not produce any interaction with medicines. What simultaneously will be giving, it should not produce any electrolyte or acid base imbalance, and it should be cheap also. But at present, we don't have any fluid which can meet all these criteria. So coming to the different fluids, so we know that these fluids can be classified as isotonic, hypertonic, and hypotonic. This tonicity entirely depends on the amount of sodium that is present with probably potassium, because potassium is very less in extracellular compartment. It is mostly the sodium. So as long as the combination of this is between 130 to 150, you call it as an isotonic solution. If it is less than 130, you call it as hypotonic. And if the sodium levels are higher than 150, you can call it as a hypertonic solution. So in an isotonic solution, when you give, there won't be any net change in the water from the intracellular to extracellular compartment. In hypertonic, definitely there can be a dehydration of the intracellular environment. And if you are giving hypotonic solutions, which we have to use like 5% dextrose, more amount of water will diffuse across into the intracellular compartment, and there can be intracellular edema, including if you are giving hypotonic solutions intraoperatively and postoperatively, there can be even cerebral edema can also occur. So it is always better to go for isotonic solutions. One more thing is the osmolarity of the solutions. The osmolarity depends on the number of the solute particles that are present. The normal osmolarity, the plasma osmolarity, is, you all know that it is roughly about between 280 to 300. So ideal fluid should be it should be an isotonic and isoosmolar. That means the osmolarity should be above 280 and around 300 milliosmoles per liter. So, a recent meta-analysis has demonstrated that isotonic IV maintenance fluids with sodium concentrations similar to that of plasma reduce the risk of hyponatremia when compared with hypotonic IV fluids. So that is another reason why we always go for isotonic solutions intraoperatively. So regarding glucose, because many of the pediatricians and also the pediatric surgeons keep giving glucose for these children. So whether they do require intraoperatively any glucose, because various studies have found out that the anesthesia and perioperative stress evokes a physiological response that can increase the serum glucose. Actually, hypoglycemia is never a problem in healthy children during the intraoperative and immediate postoperative period. But there are certain groups of children who are at risk of hypoglycemia. Who are these groups of children? So neonates, infants undergoing major abdominal surgeries, children who are malnourished, then children who are we are giving extensive regional work where stress response can be minimal, and children receiving total parenteral nutrition, and also children with metabolic disorders like even probably the diabetes mellitus. So all these are the children who require glucose intraoperatively and in the postoperative period. So the Association of Pediatric Anesthetists of Great Britain and Ireland, and also the European consensus statement guidelines, they say that for all these children who you think that they require intraoperative glucose, they should be given 1 to 2.5% of glucose along with other isotonic fluids. So what are the common fluids that are available? And routinely, you all will be using these are the fluids like normal saline, the lactated ringers, and the recently introduced, or maybe about almost nearly about 5-6 years back, Plasma-Lyte also. So what is very important here is if these fluids, if they have identical electrolytes as plasma, so they are probably the best type of fluids. So if you see normal saline, it has got a very high quantity of chlorides. So it can produce hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis. So it is not an ideal fluid to be used. Whereas lactated ringers may be ideal, but slightly hypotonic because the sodium content is slightly on the lower side. Otherwise, it is isoosmolar. So it is cheap also. So one can go for lactated ringer solution. But Plasma-Lyte also can be used because the Plasma-Lyte, the advantage is it is almost like plasma without plasma proteins. Another advantage with Plasma-Lyte is the bicarb, which is present as acetate and succinate, will not increase the lactate levels. Whereas ringer lactate, because here the bicarb is present as lactate, can also increase lactate levels, especially in children with septic shock and all, where you are continuously monitoring lactate. So in such children, it is better to go for Plasma-Lyte rather than ringer lactate. So there can be a lot of problems associated with normal saline, like I said about hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis, myocardial depression, hyperkalemia as a result of acidosis, and there can be renal tubular damage also, and it can lead to acute kidney injury. Of course, all these are theoretical possibilities, but since these are theoretical possibilities are there, if you have better alternative like lactated ringers or Plasma-Lyte, it is always better to go for those fluids rather than normal saline. Of course, normal saline also has got a place, especially in those children with repeated vomitings before surgery, like hypertrophic pyloric stenosis, where they do have hypochloremic metabolic alkalosis. Their normal saline is the fluid of choice. Coming to monitoring, we know that we have various monitors, static parameters, dynamic parameters. We know that static parameters are not ideal for managing the intraoperative fluid therapy. So in adult patients, dynamic parameters nowadays are routinely used. Various dynamic parameters are being used. So the invasive monitoring will be required for measuring these parameters. One of the non-invasive parameter which can be measured continuously is the blood variability index. So static parameters also can be used for for minor and intermediate procedures in children. But for major procedures, it is always better to monitor the dynamic parameters. And breath variability index, being a non-invasive one, can be used for monitoring. So in adult patients, many times, to know fluid responsiveness, one of the tests that is done is the passive leg raise test. So if we passively increase elevate the legs, and if there is an improvement in the stroke volume, then we know that the patient is fluid responsive, and we can keep giving the boluses of fluid challenges. But in pediatric, this test is of no use because the limbs are very short, and the amount of fluid in the lower half of the body is much less when compared to the adults. So whereas one more test that has been advocated is the pressure over the liver or the right hypochondrium. So once the pressure is applied over the right hypochondrium, fluid from the splanchnic storage can be shifted to central circulation, and the blood pressure can improve if the child is running a fluid deficit. That is, if this graph you can see here, this graph is a Frank-Starling curve. If the child is in the top portion of the Frank, that is the plateau portion of the Frank-Starling curve, where it is not going to be fluid responsive, when application of pressure over the liver will not produce any blood pressure changes. But if the child is in the steeper portion of the Frank-Starling curve, definitely there will be wide fluctuations of blood pressure that shows that the child is fluid responsive. So another one is, using pulse oximeters like Masimo Radical 7 monitors, where continuously they give the pleth variability index. You all know what is pleth variability index. For that, you have to know what is perfusion index, which is the ratio between the pulsatile and non-pulsatile components. So we know that when a child is on a controlled ventilation, during the inspiration, the venous return, because of the IPPV, venous return will come down, and the naturally the perfusion index also will come down. So during expiration, the perfusion index will increase. So this fluctuation of perfusion index can be very wide if the child is fluid responsive. So that's how this perfusion pleth variability index can be calculated. PI max minus PI minimum divided by PI max into 100. So this PVI, pleth variability index, is continuously being given on the monitor in certain recent pulse oximeters. So by monitoring this, if the pleth variability index is above 13%, the child will be fluid responsive. You can keep giving boluses of fluid. If the PVI is less than 10%, then you know that the child will not require any fluids. So that's how one can definitely use. There are various papers have come up with the PVI being very useful for controlled ventilation under anesthesia. There are papers are also there recently. Weber et al. Have found out that it can be used even in spontaneously breathing anesthetized children as well. Coming to the postoperative fluid management, so as early as possible, it is better to start oral fluids if the child is undergoing a minor surgery. And if the child has undergone a major surgery, there can be quite a bit of stimulation for the child for the hypothalamus to release the antidiuretic hormone. And this antidiuretic hormone produces quite a bit of fluid retention in the postoperative period. So if we give hypotonic solutions, because previously Holiday and Cigar, they used to advocate 1/5 normal saline with 5% dextrose, which is quite hypotonic. So because of the ADH, already there is more water retention. Plus, we are giving hypotonic solutions that can produce dangerous hyponatremia, and that can produce real problems in the postoperative period. So that is the reason ideal would be to go for isotonic fluids, but for the first 12 hours, because the maximum amount of ADH secretion would be there, it is better to go for the reducing the maintenance fluids in the postoperative period from 4 to 1 formula, what we always use in the preoperative and intraoperative phase. One can go for 2 1.5 ml per kg per hour, because already there can be sufficient amount of water retention in the postoperative period. So after 12 hours, we can again go back to 4 to 1 formula. And again, in the after 12 hours, till 12 hours, don't give any glucose. After 12 hours, one can give glucose containing fluids. So one more thing I just want to tell you about. Now we don't have, because intraoperatively, it has been advocated that certain children require 1 to 2% or up to 2% of glucose. So since we don't have any glucose containing 2% glucose containing isotonic fluid, you can definitely prepare. You can take 500 ml of ringer lactate or plasmolide. You can add about 20 ml of 50% dextrose to it. That contains 2% dextrose with ringer lactate or plasmolide. So that can be used especially in neonates and other children who really require glucose intraoperatively. So coming to the blood component therapy, very briefly, I'll not go into details about the blood component therapy. The transfusion trigger is again 7 to 8 grams of hemoglobin in pediatric age group, like in adult population. So, you can definitely go for maximal allowable blood loss. We all know that maximal allowable blood loss you can calculate, and if it exceeds intraoperatively, you can definitely give packed cells. So this formula also is there. You can definitely look into this formula of knowing what is the volume of packed cells you have to give in the post-operative period, in the intraoperative period if the child is bleeding. So this formula is body weight multiplied by the desired increment of hemoglobin multiplied by 5. So this directly gives us what is the volume of the packed cells you have to give. So MABL, you all know that estimated blood volume, the same thing like in adults, you can also calculate here. And starting hematocrit minus target hematocrit divided by starting hematocrit. So this gives us what is the maximum allowable blood loss that you can allow intraoperatively. Anything increase more than this, you have to better give packed cells intraoperatively. And in neonates, especially the Canadian guidelines says, and also there is a law called as the Davenport law, says that if the neonate bleeds more than 10%, it is better to replace the amount of blood loss by giving the packed cells. So just to summarize, before surgery, minimize fasting periods, and for minor procedures, so you can maintain a fluid infusion of 10 to 20 ml, and in case of children who require glucose, you can add 1 to 2% glucose. And for older children, you need not have to give any glucose intraoperatively and immediate postoperatively. So intermediate procedures, so you can keep adding extra fluid depending on the amount of loss that occurs. And also you can consider some amount of colloids, though colloids do not have much role in pediatric fluid management. So for major procedures, of course, major procedures may also require blood transfusion. So you may have to give blood. And after surgery, as early as possible, better to start the oral fluids for these children. So these are some of my references. So thank you so much for patient listening. And if there are any questions, I am ready to take.